The United States, though, has officially completed its first sale of Venezuelan oil following the capture of President Nicolás Maduro. And while not much is known about the sale itself yet, we do know where that money is being kept, and it has very many people concerned. So, according to an administration official, the first sale of oil was valued at $500 million, and additional sales are expected to be made soon.
Welcome back, folks, and buckle up. We're diving into a transcript today that's a masterclass in twisting facts and spinning narratives, all to paint a picture of American villainy. From oil deals in Venezuela to offshore bank accounts in Qatar, and some truly wild claims about our allies, this clip has it all. We're gonna cut through the noise, expose the flawed arguments, and remind everyone what true American leadership actually looks like. Let's roll the tape.
So the details about the first oil sale were unclear on Wednesday, but in a statement, White House spokesperson Taylor Rogers said that President Trump's team is facilitating positive, ongoing discussions with oil companies that are ready and willing to make unprecedented investments to restore Venezuela's oil infrastructure. So Trump has previously met with U.S. energy executives on Friday to discuss the administration's plans to capitalize on the oil that they seized. During this meeting, Trump stated the oil industry would need to invest at least $100 billion into rebuilding the country's energy sector in Venezuela. But many executives at the meeting actually showed some skepticism, including ExxonMobil CEO Darren Woods. Take a look.
With respect to Venezuela in particular, we have a very long history in Venezuela. In fact, we first got into Venezuela back in the 1940s. We've had our assets seized there twice. And so you can imagine to re-enter a third time would require some pretty significant changes from what we've historically seen here and what is currently the state. If we look at the legal and commercial constructs and frameworks in place today in Venezuela, today it's uninvestable. And so significant changes have to be made to those commercial frameworks, the legal system. There has to be durable investment protections, and there has to be change to the hydrocarbon laws in the country.
Well, executives like Woods and also ConocoPhillips CEO Ryan Phillips, they made it very clear that they wanted deep reforms and political stability in Venezuela before they look into making any kind of real investments in the country, which is very understandable. But as you can see, Donald Trump wanted to make a quick deal because that's what he does. He's a deal maker, you guys. So now, according to an administration official who spoke to Semaphore, the interim leadership in Venezuela, led by former Maduro #2 Delcy Rodriguez, has fully cooperated since the U.S.-Venezuelan energy deal was announced last week, adding that the U.S. has leveraged through sanctions and oil sales. But there is concern with where the money is actually going. So revenue from the oil sales is currently being held in bank accounts controlled by the U.S. government, as indicated in Friday's order, according to the administration official. The main account, according to a second senior administration official, is located in Qatar. The second official described Qatar as a neutral location where money can flow freely with U.S. approval and without risk of seizure. Trump's order noted that at least some of the revenue would be held in U.S. Treasury accounts.
Hold on. Neutral location where money can flow freely without risk of seizure? For U.S. government-controlled funds? You know, for a nation like the United States, which literally underpinned the global financial system, the idea that our government needs an offshore account in Qatar to protect its funds from seizure, it's not just absurd, it's downright insulting, especially to our national sovereignty and financial strength. It's like saying you need to hide your life savings under your mattress in a foreign country because your local federally insured bank isn't secure enough. What are we, a banana republic suddenly incapable of managing our own finances? Give me a break. And then, of course, the immediate predictable lead to Trump and Qatar are closed, therefore corruption. It's classic guilt by association. This isn't journalism, folks. It's purely unadulterated gossip and character assassination. They're implying a massive quid pro quo. It doesn't make any sense to me, based on nothing but proximity and a past. completely legal business deal. It's a convenient, lazy way to bypass actual evidence and just smear somebody. When you can't attach the policy on its merits, like the fact that seizing oil from a socialist dictator might actually be a good thing, you attack the person's character with thinly veiled insinuations. I'm sorry. It's a deflection tactic as old as time itself. The US Treasury Department oversees these accounts. Our own government. The idea that Qatar, a nation with its own complex geopolitical landscape and a history of supporting various factions, is somehow more secure or neutral than a direct US Treasury account in the US for American controlled funds, is a narrative explicitly designed to do one thing: sow distrust. We don't have any trust for anybody, whether it be our people or our government. They want us to believe everything is shady, everything is corrupt, because it especially shows that if a Republican is in charge. It's a tired, predictable playbook that undermines the legitimate efforts, and I don't know. Frankly, it's just incredibly boring. Let's focus on facts, not conspiracy theories, especially if they're dressed up as concerns, because they're not really concerns.
It is unclear who the Trump administration believes who would try to seize the cash, or why money being in Qatar would be less of a seizure risk than a bank account in the United States. But as you can imagine, the idea of using an offshore account has raised some red flags. There is no basis in law for a president to set up an offshore account that he controls so that he can sell assets seized by the American military. That is precisely a move that a corrupt politician would be attracted to. And that was from Senator Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts. And remember, Qatar and the Trump family are very, very close. And that may become relevant later on in our show tonight. We'll have to see. We're keeping an eye out for some breaking news. But back in May, the royal family gifted Trump a $400 million plane after securing a deal with the Trump family to build a golf resort in Qatar. That seems like a lot of money for a golf resort. But, that this is the world that we live in, and this is our very corrupt president that we have elected twice. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent tried, emphasis on tried, to be a bit more transparent, telling the Economic Club of Minnesota that the Treasury Department will oversee the accounts and then, at the direction of Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, be in charge of the disbursement that goes back into Venezuela. The Treasury's role will be making sure the funds get to the proper place. We're the bankers here. We don't direct the funds. Good. Waz, that doesn't make me feel good about a lot of what's happening, but you made the allusion earlier in the show to 9/11 and the invasion of Iraq that followed that. This all feels very much in line with that, which is something that a lot of us said from the very beginning.
I think there's a lot of things folks need to remember here. One, this idea that the bank needs to be in Qatar for some security reason is absurd. We have some of the most secure. We are the banking system of the world. Like it's all based on our stuff. So this idea that we would need to have accounts in Qatar is quite ridiculous. And but more to the point about, because I've seen a lot of these right wing idiots in their commentary about Venezuela, like, oh, we're gonna get cheap oil. Who is we? Like, American consumers are not getting cheap oil. Folks need to always remember, when it comes to oil and our prices that we pay, we have a ton of oil in America, but what that also means is we have American producers, American companies who want to do what, Yaz? Make profits. It's not in their interests for oil to become dirt cheap for Americans. Okay, because that will disrupt the overall oil market, which they don't want it to get too low. They don't want to drive down the price of oil for everyday Americans, because that would mean their oil also becomes cheaper. They can't sell it for a higher price point. Like this whole, we're getting, like, as if the average American person is going to benefit from any of this, is ridiculous. And my favorite part was that white boy talking about our assets were seized in Venezuela.
Yeah.
Like you own the oil assets in those people's country. It's quite hilarious and telling just the attitude about this entire, Venezuela entanglement.
Whoa, 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 whoa. My favorite part was that white boy talking about our assets were seized? Really? Is this how we're going to discuss international business, property rights, and the rule of law now? By reducing someone to their skin color and dismissing their legitimate concerns about expropriating the investments with a racially charged jab? This isn't just unprofessional. It's a cheap shot designed to shut down any nuanced discussion about what happens when a country nationalizes private property without compensation. It's identity politics masquerading as foreign policy analysis, and let's be honest, it's pathetic. And yes, when American companies invest billions, I'm going to repeat myself, billions, to develop infrastructure, create jobs, and extract resources under legal agreements, those are unequivocally their assets. When a government, regardless of its ideology, arbitrarily seizes those assets, it's not some victimless crime, it's outright theft. It sends a chilling message to every investor worldwide, not just in America, that their property isn't safe. This isn't owning people's country. It's honoring contracts and respecting the fundamental principles of a stable economy. Without that, you get economic chaos and a complete lack of foreign investment, which, surprise, surprise, is exactly what happened in Venezuela, leading to its current humanitarian crisis. So, if you're not fully aware of how economics works and investment works, I would probably not comment about it. That might make you look a little bit more intelligent, more respectable.
Yeah, and that's a line that they keep trying to push on the American people. They're like, if we just keep repeating over and over again that our oil is in another country, under the ground in another country, then maybe the American people would be like, I guess that's ours. I guess they stole it from us, even though, again, it's in their country. And it's a hell of a loophole. It's a hell of a stretch. The justification for why Trump even says that at all. And of course, it makes no sense, but that's the line that they're going to go with. And that's how they're going to sell it and continue to sell it or attempt to the American people.
And by the way, it just related to this, why this is also just ridiculous. And this whole might makes right thing is so ridiculous. We
Mhm.
spent 3 years between Americans and European nations finger wagging at Vladimir Putin about he doesn't have the right to police his own region. He doesn't have a right to call a regime illegitimate, blah, 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 blah. And then we completely back this
Mhm.
Venezuelan nonsense, this just straight up bullying and criminal theft of their resources that we have no right to do, don't respect any of their sovereignty. And now we're talking about, oh, we want to topple the Iranian regime. And we spent 3 years lecturing Vladimir Putin about Ukraine. Like, these people just don't have any leg to stand on. They have no principles, and it's no wonder that we have no respect across the world.
Yeah, and we're going to hear some more about that because we're obviously not just doing this in Venezuela. Trump has big plans for the United States and for our military and for our industries and all this. But speaking of our industry in Venezuela, it gets worse. Okay, so now they're talking about private security contractors in Venezuela. Right now, Chevron is the only major US oil company staying operational in Venezuela. And as the Trump administration tries to convince other players to reinvest, it must prove they'll have some kind of security to operate. So, what does that look like if there's no boots on the ground? Well, the Trump administration is preparing to use private military contractors to protect oil and energy assets in Venezuela rather than deploying US troops, according to two sources familiar with the plans, setting up a potential boon for security firms with experience in the region and ties to the administration. Discussions about how to secure those assets remain in the early stages. Sources said still multiple private security companies are already jockeying to get involved in the U.S. presence in Venezuela. According to a person familiar with the matter, interest is high given the potential payday. During the Iraq War, for example, the U.S. spent some $138 billion on private security, logistics, and reconstruction contractors. So now again, this has some people skeptical because private contractors typically lead to some sort of controversy. You know, he uses a lot of private contractors as Vladimir Putin, just throwing that out there. For example, private contractors hired during the Iraq war face allegations of things like war profiteering. And, potentially that is something we could see going on in Venezuela going forward. So one source suggested that Eric Prince, the former Blackwater founder and controversial Trump ally, could also be tapped for help. Prince's Blackwater played an outsized role in Iraq after the 2003 U.S. invasion, providing security, logistics, and support for oil infrastructure. But the firm came under intense scrutiny following the 2007 deadly shooting of Iraqi civilians. Yeah, that's what happens. When you're not beholden to these certain standards that the American military is. If you just have a bunch of pirates running around, then you're going to have instances where an entire population is being terrorized by private military groups. And this is why Trump can get away with saying we're not going to put boots on the ground in Venezuela, even though they obviously need to do something. You can't just invade a country, take their president out, and then leave it alone and do nothing and say nothing. And then also, on top of that, expect to profit off of their oil industry. And, I want to hear from you, but also I just want to mention real quick that the United States, we are incredibly hypocritical in what we're doing. I don't know how we can stand up to someone like Vladimir Putin, who is doing imperialism in Europe right now in his attempts to take over Ukraine, but also right now. Troops from several European countries have been sent to Greenland from France, Germany, Norway, Sweden. These are our allies, and they're being sent to Greenland to protect Greenland from us. So just want to throw that out there.
Okay, stop the presses. European troops sent to Greenland to protect it from us? Are we talking about the same Greenland that part of the Kingdom of Denmark, a staunch NATO ally? And the us being the United States, their primary security guarantor for decades, the nation that literally liberated most of Europe in World War II. This isn't just a stretch. It's a full-blown Olympic gymnastic routine of misinformation, probably performed by a clown car full of woke academics. Let's be adamantly clear. There's no credible evidence, none. No news report, no official statement from France, or from Germany, or from Norway, or from Sweden, or Denmark, suggesting that they're deploying troops to Greenland to defend against a phantom U.S. invasion. This sounds something right straight out of a bad spy novel from the 1970s, not a geopolitical reality in the 21st century. What is happening is the Arctic is increasingly military presence from NATO allies, including the U.S., to counter Russia aggression and expansion in the region. Actually, tangible threats. Russia, not America, is the one rattles sabers in the north, in the high north. This kind of wild, unsubstantial claim isn't just irresponsible. It's purposely designed to paint America as the ultimate boogeyman, even to our closest friends. We're not doing anything but protect our NATO allies.
Yeah, it's just one quick note because I know we do got to kick to break in a second about the privatization of the American military. I mean, this has been going on basically since Iraq and Afghanistan. This was Donald Rumsfeld's brainchild when he took over the Defense Department. Was that he was going to privatize it and make it less dependent on basically the volunteer services, so that when a guy's leg gets blown off while he's doing God knows what in a bada or wherever he's at. Um, when he comes home, that doesn't count towards like U.S. military death toll, right? And these guys get to operate in a more rogue fashion because they're private military contractors, and that's been the trend. And so the military, it's if we're not doing like special forces operations like the Maduro kidnapping or the Bin Laden raid or many of those other things, or what we did in Libya and stuff like that, which is like super specific, very small scale, get out. And then, we outsource our treachery to local militia groups or private contractors. Like that's just been the game. It's gross, it's disgusting, but this is what it's been for going on 20 something years now.
Yeah, and just to cap off on that note, whenever we talk about our military budget, how much money we put into our American military, we have the best funded military in the world by a lot.
And there you have it, folks. Another deep dive in the kind of rhetoric that tries to confuse, distract, and ultimately divide us. It's critical to listen carefully, question everything, and not let these emotionally charged, very weak arguments sway your understanding of what's really happening in the world. So tell me, if you appreciate us cutting through the noise and giving you the unfiltered truth, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next breakdown. And tell us in the comments below, what do you think about these claims? We want to hear from you. We want to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.